Before the story starts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
Every morning, he woke before the sun. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. At that hour, the world felt honest. The lake rested like a mirror. Soft fog floated above the water. Birds moved slowly, as if they respected the silence. This was the life he chose. The lakefront mansion stood quietly at the edge of the community. Large, but not loud. Strong, but not proud. It was not built to impress anyone. It was built to breathe. Wide glass windows faced the water. A long wooden deck stretched toward the lake. Stone walls held warmth, not ego. Inside, the house felt calm. No shining gold. No expensive art meant to show status. Only books. Simple furniture. Old photographs that carried memories. This place was not about showing success. It was about surviving the noise of the world. The man who lived there was quiet by nature. He did not speak more than needed. He did not ask questions that brought attention. He believed peace was fragile. And silence protected it. The neighbors noticed him, of course. It was impossible not to. A lakefront mansion always draws eyes. People whispered when he moved in. Who is he? What does he do? How can he afford that? But he never gave answers. He waved politely. He smiled softly. Then he returned to his life. Some thought he was rich. Some thought he was lucky. Some thought he was hiding something. In truth, he was hiding nothing. He simply didn't need to explain himself. The community had rules. Too many rules. Everyone knew that. The Homeowners Association controlled everything. Grass height. Fence color. Mailbox shape. Even how long trash bins could stay outside. People followed the rules not because they believed in them, but because they feared penalties. The HOA president was known throughout the community. Her name was spoken carefully. Quietly. She walked with confidence. She spoke with authority. Some admired her. Most feared her. Behind her back, neighbors used another name. Karen. But never to her face. He knew about the HOA before moving in. He read every rule. Every page. Every small line. He followed them all. Not because he was afraid, but because he respected structure. He believed that order, when fair, created peace. He paid every HOA fee early. Never late. Never questioned. Money was not the issue. Peace was. 4 months, life stayed calm. Mornings began with coffee on the deck. Evenings ended with quiet sunsets. The lake changed with the seasons. Spring brought green reflections. Summer brought deep blue water. Fall painted gold across the surface. He felt lucky. Not because of the mansion, but because of the silence. Some neighbors slowly warmed to him. A young couple waved every morning. An older woman walking her dog always smiled. They never talked long. Just enough. He liked it that way. Inside the mansion, nights were quiet. Sometimes he stood by the window, watching lights turn off one by one across the community. He wondered how many people felt trapped. Trapped by rules. By fear. By the need to please authority. He felt free. He thought he had escaped that world. But peace has a way of testing those who trust it too much. One afternoon, after returning from a short trip, something felt wrong. The sky was gray. The lake was still. Too still. As he walked toward his front door, he noticed a white paper stuck to it. Perfectly placed. Official. His steps slowed. He stared at the paper for a moment longer than needed. Not afraid. Just alert. He pulled it off the door. At the top, Bold black letters stared back at him. Homeowners Association notice. He let out a slow breath. Inside, the letter spoke of a small issue. An adjustment to fees. No clear explanation. No numbers. Just instructions to contact the HOA office. He read it twice. He already knew something was wrong. He had paid everything. Every fee. Every bill. On time. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his pocket. Mistake, he told himself. Mistakes happen. That evening, he still sat on the deck. But the lake felt different. The wind was colder. The birds left early. Peas felt thinner. As night fell, lights glowed in the HOA office across the community. Inside, someone was reviewing his file. Someone who saw rules not as order, but as weapons. Someone who believed silence meant weakness. The man inside the mansion slept calmly, unaware that his quiet life had just been noticed. Not by chance, but by choice. And once power notices you, it rarely looks away. The lake remained still. But beneath the surface, something had begun to move. The next morning arrived like any other. Sunlight touched the lake softly. But the calm he loved was missing. A weight hung in the air. A subtle warning, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore. He brewed his coffee slowly, watching the ripples on the water. Each wave reflected a question. Why this notice? Why now? The paper in his pocket burned with unspoken tension. It was not just ink on paper, it was a signal. The HOA had noticed him. And now, he had to respond. With measured steps, he drove to the HOA office. The building sat near the community entrance, small and nondescript. But its walls were filled with authority. Every corner whispered rules. Every poster screamed control. Late fees will not be tolerated, one sign said. Failure to comply may result in penalties, said another. He pushed open the door. And the sound of the hinges echoed like a warning. Behind the desk sat the HOA president. She looked up slowly, eyes sharp and assessing. No greeting. No courtesy. Just presence. A presence that could make people shrink without touching them. Yes, she asked, cold and clipped. He placed the notice on the desk. I received this, he said softly. I think there may be a mistake. Her eyes skimmed the paper for a second. Then she leaned back, folding her arms. A smile appeared, but it was not kind. We don't make mistakes, she said. Her voice had the precision of a blade. He stayed calm. I have records. All fees are paid on time, he said. Every word measured, deliberate. She finally looked at him directly. Her smile widened. A predator assessing its prey. There are new community adjustments, she said. Lakefront properties pay more. He paused. And I was never informed? She shrugged. Not my problem, she said. Her eyes flicked toward the door. Pay within 7 days, or face consequences. The word consequences hung in the air. Heavy. Sharp. Threatening. The kind of word that lingers long after it is spoken. He nodded politely and left. Outside, the sun was bright. But warmth did not reach him. The world felt heavier. Neighbors peeked from windows. Curiosity mixed with fear. Back at his mansion, he spread all his documents across the table. Receipts. Payments. Everything in perfect order. He emailed the HOA office immediately, attaching every proof of payment. No reply came. Then another notice arrived. Bright red this time. Final warning. The words were bold, deliberate. Every sentence seemed designed to provoke. You are non-cooperative, it read. You are breaking community trust. He read it slowly. A smile curved on his lips. Not a happy smile. Not relief. But a knowing smile. Outside, the community felt a subtle shift. Other neighbors whispered. Some glanced nervously at him. Fear had begun to spread. At the next community meeting, the tension became visible. The HOA president walked to the front of the room. Her steps were precise, deliberate. She spoke loudly about order. Discipline. How some homeowners think rules are optional. Her eyes found him, scanning silently. As if to say, you will bow, or you will fall. He sat quietly in the back, listening. Calm. Patient. Invisible. Her words were sharp, but hollow. Power, she thought, was still hers. But the first cracks were forming. When the meeting ended, a neighbor approached him cautiously. Be careful, the man whispered. She targets anyone she can't control. He nodded once. No words needed. The next morning, a third notice arrived. This one listed violations. His dock. His deck. The landscaping. All false. All carefully written. It was no longer about money. It was about control. About breaking his calm, his silence. He folded the letter, slipping it into his pocket as if it were nothing. But he felt the truth settle like stones in his chest. Machines waited outside his mansion. Yellow and loud. Hungry for destruction. A warning, the HOA would act. Not later. Not cautiously. Immediately. He looked at the lake once more. The water reflected the sky. But it mirrored something else too. The tension rising. The calm about to shatter. That night, he sat on his deck, coffee in hand. The wind was cooler. The lake's reflection darker. The peace he had built, carefully over years, was fragile now. He took out his phone. He did not call anyone. Not yet. He watched. Calculated. Waited. Because he understood something crucial. The HOA was not interested in fairness. They wanted submission. They wanted fear. And he was not afraid. For the first time, the community felt the shift. The quiet man they had ignored, the one they assumed was weak, was no longer just a neighbor. He was a problem they had not counted on. As the night deepened, the wind picked up. Small waves hit the shore. The trees whispered warnings in the dark. Somewhere far off, the hum of engines started. Tomorrow, the HOA would act. But he was ready. Because silence, when used well, is not weakness. It is strategy. It is power waiting to reveal itself. And tomorrow, the calm life they thought they could control would start to fight back. The morning arrived with a strange tension. It was not the quiet of peace, nor the calm of the lake at dawn. It was the kind of silence that felt like the air itself was holding its breath. A hard knock echoed through the mansion. Sharp. Insistent. Unfriendly. He opened the door slowly. 2 HOA officers stood there, clipboards in hand. Badges shining under the pale sunlight. We are here for inspection, one said. There was no greeting. No courtesy. No explanation. He stepped aside calmly, inviting them in. They moved with authority, their steps confident and unyielding. Every corner they examined felt like an accusation. Every measurement they took whispered judgment. He watched. Silent. Patient. When they reached the lake deck, the officer shook his head. This dock is not approved, he said. He replied calmly. It was approved years ago. I have the documents. The officer did not care. Approval has changed, he said. One word. A weapon. By noon, the rumors spread across the community like wildfire. He broke the rules, people whispered. He thinks he's above the HOA. He will pay now. The HOA president watched from her office window. Satisfied. Powerful. Invincible in her own mind. Inside, she planned her next move. By the afternoon, a thick envelope arrived at the mansion. Legal language printed in black ink. Cold. Calculated. It listed violations he had never committed. Unauthorized construction. Design misuse. Failure to cooperate with community management. Every line was deliberate. Every sentence intended to wound. He read it slowly. Carefully. A small smile formed on his lips. Not one of joy. Not of relief. But a knowing smile. Outside, the neighbors watched nervously. Some kept their distance. Some whispered. Fear had begun to take root. The next community meeting arrived. And the tension was nearly tangible. The HOA president walked to the front of the room. Her steps precise and confident. She spoke loudly about order, discipline, and obedience. Her words were sharp, cutting through the room like a knife. Her gaze found him, silent but present. As if daring him to respond. He did not flinch. Did not look angry. Did not speak. His calm was unshakable. Almost unnatural. The board members nodded at her words. Some whispered in agreement. Some glanced at him nervously. He had become a puzzle they could not solve. When the meeting ended, a neighbor approached him quietly. Be careful, the man whispered. She targets anyone she cannot control. He nodded once. No words needed. He understood. The next morning, a third notice arrived. It was more aggressive this time. It listed every violation imaginable. All false, all designed to provoke. The dock. The deck. The landscaping. The mansion itself seemed under attack by invisible rules. Outside, yellow machines waited. Engines idling. Metal glinting in the sun. The message was clear. The HOA would not wait. They were coming. He looked at the lake, still and reflective. For a moment, he allowed himself a deep breath. The peace he had cherished was crumbling. But he did not panic. Inside, he organized his thoughts. Documents. Proof. Records. Every payment, every permit, every approval. He did not make a call yet. Not yet. Because he knew something the HOA could not see. This was no longer about fees. This was about control. Power. Ego. And he was ready. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he stood on the deck. Coffee in hand. Watching the light fade over the lake. The water reflected the sky. But it mirrored something else as well. The tension rising. The calm about to shatter. The HOA had made a fatal mistake. They believed silence meant weakness. They believed calm meant submission. They were wrong. The quiet man they had ignored. The one who smiled politely. Who never spoke more than necessary. Was about to become something they could not control. From a distance, the faint hum of engines began. The machines were ready. The workers were prepared. The plan was set. But he was ready too. He did not run. He did not yell. He did not plead. He waited. He observed. He calculated. The calm that had protected him for years was transforming into power. The quiet that the HOA thought was fear was patience. And when the sun finally disappeared behind the trees, casting the community into twilight, he felt it, the shift. The balance of power was about to change. The lake rippled slightly, as if sensing the storm that was coming. Tomorrow, the HOA would act. Tomorrow, they would try to break him. Tomorrow, their rules, their machines, their authority would collide with something they had never expected. He did not move. He did not panic. He did not flinch. For in the quiet, he was already preparing. And when the moment came, he would be ready. The lake stayed still that night. But beneath the surface, currents had begun to move. And they were moving fast. The morning came slowly, but with it came a sound that shattered the calm. It wasn't birdsong. It wasn't the soft lapping of the lake against the shore. It was the low, hungry hum of engines, metal scraping against metal, and voices shouting orders. He stepped onto his deck, coffee in hand, and watched. 3 large construction machines rolled down the street toward his mansion. Bright yellow. Massive. Hungry. Behind them, the HOA president strode with purpose, papers clutched tightly in her hand. Her eyes were sharp. Her smile confident. She felt untouchable. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, from windows, and on quiet sidewalks. Some held phones. Some whispered. Most turned away, too afraid to intervene. The first machine stopped at the edge of the deck. "Start there," she commanded, her voice slicing through the morning air. The operator nodded and moved forward. Wood cracked. Glass shivered. The air filled with the smell of dust and splintered timber. He did not move. He did not shout. He did not panic. The HOA president noticed him standing calmly on the deck. "You had your chance," she said, her voice sharp with authority. Her eyes searched his for fear. For anger. For anything that might give her satisfaction. He simply looked at her. "I followed every rule," he said quietly. Her laughter was sharp and cruel. "Rules change," she said. Then she waved her hand toward the machine operator. "Finish it." The machine rolled forward. The deck trembled. Splinters flew into the air. The place where he drank his morning coffee, watched sunsets, and found peace was being destroyed before his eyes. Some neighbors turned away. Some froze, watching. This was no longer about rules. This was punishment. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply observed. She wanted a reaction. She wanted anger. She wanted fear. And he gave her nothing. The machine hit the corner of the house. A wall cracked. Glass shattered. Years of care, work, and peace. Torn apart in minutes. A neighbor whispered to another. "This isn't right. It's cruel." But no one stepped in. No one dared. The HOA president raised her voice. "This is what happens when you do not respect authority." He turned to her slowly. Calm, measured. "Stop," he said. She laughed. "You don't tell me what to do," she spat. The machine rolled toward the main wall, the heart of the mansion. The wall that had kept warmth, memories, and quiet. The wall that had protected him from the noise of the world. Crack. Dust. The sound echoed across the lake. He did not flinch. For years, he had built patience. For years, he had tolerated whispers, rumors, and fear. Now, all that silence became strategy. Then, faintly, he heard it. A sound cutting through the chaos. Sirens. Slow at first. Then louder. Closer. The HOA president froze. Workers paused mid-step. Machines idled. Police cars turned into the street. Behind them, black SUVs appeared. Lawyers and city officials stepped out, papers in hand, eyes sharp. The HOA president's confident smile faltered. Her orders, once absolute, now sounded fragile. Weak. He stepped aside, still calm. He did not celebrate. He did not gloat. He simply watched. The officials approached. A man in a dark suit walked directly toward the HOA president. "Ma'am," he said. We need to speak with you immediately. Her mouth opened. Then closed. No words came. He looked at the destruction. The broken deck. The shattered wall. He did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He did not need to. For once, the people who wielded power thought they were untouchable. And now, they were about to realize how fragile their control truly was. The sirens continued to echo across the lake. Neighbors peeked again, some hiding behind trees, some on their phones. The HOA president tried to summon authority. Stop! You have no right. Her voice faltered under the weight of legal reality. Her eyes darted between the police, the officials, and him. She realized, perhaps too late, that everything she had controlled was slipping through her fingers. He stood silently, the calm before the storm. The calm that had protected him for years was now the shield against chaos. The lake reflected the sun faintly, but its surface seemed darker, heavier. The water mirrored what he had known all along. The HOA had crossed a line. They had destroyed more than wood and stone. They had destroyed trust, balance, and reason. And now, they would face the consequences. He did not speak. He did not need to. Every step the officials took, every order given to the HOA president, shifted the power back to where it belonged. For the first time, she looked small. Fragile. Human. The workers stepped back. The machine stopped. Yellow metal stood silent, useless, and waiting. The lake rippled slightly in the wind, as if it too sensed the change. The calm after the storm. But the storm had not ended. He walked back toward the mansion. Calm. Collected. Ready. Because he knew something the HOA could not see. This was not the end. It was the beginning. The quiet man, the one they had ignored, underestimated, and feared nothing from, was about to reveal the truth. The lake stayed still that night. But beneath the surface, currents had begun to stir. Currents that would not stop. Currents that would reshape everything. The street was quiet. No engines. No shouting. No crashing of wood or glass. Only the soft ripple of the lake against the shore. The mansion stood in the morning light, scarred but defiant. Dust floated in the air like tiny clouds of memory, reminding the neighborhood of the chaos that had come and gone. The police and city officials moved carefully across the property. Their footsteps were deliberate, measured. Every corner, every wall, every piece of broken wood was documented, photographed, and noted. Inside the mansion, he watched quietly. Calm. Patient. Waiting. The HOA president stood at the edge of the yard, papers clutched tightly. Her posture still proud. But the confidence she once radiated had begun to crack. Her voice, when she spoke, sounded unsure. This is a community matter, she said. You don't belong here. A man in a dark suit stepped forward, his presence commanding. We were invited, he said, his voice calm but firm. The HOA president's brow furrowed. By who? The man turned slightly toward him, the quiet man who had endured months of harassment and false accusations. I invited them, he said. The words hung in the air like a weight. A silence fell over the neighborhood. Neighbors peeked through windows. Some whispered. Some simply stared, unsure of what was unfolding. The HOA president laughed nervously. You don't have that authority. The man in the suit opened a large folder. Maps. Old documents. Original land deeds. Each page laid bare a truth the HOA had never expected. Yes, the suit said, pointing to a document stamped and signed years ago. He does. The HOA president's face paled. Color drained slowly. Shock replaced the confident mask she had worn for so long. He stood calmly, his eyes fixed on her. Not angry. Not proud. Simply observant. This community, the man in the suit continued, was developed under a private land trust. The HOA never owned the land. They were only granted management rights. The words hit like lightning. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Whispers spread. Eyes widened. Fear began to replace arrogance. The HOA president's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her papers. "This can't be true," she said. He did not speak. He had let the truth speak for itself. The officials moved around, measuring boundaries, comparing maps, checking legal documents. With each step, the balance of power shifted further. She tried to assert authority one last time. "This man owes unpaid fees." He raised one hand. "All fees are paid," he said simply. "And more." The room grew colder, the air heavier. The quiet man, whom everyone thought weak, was no longer silent in effect, only in demeanor. The man in the suit addressed the HOA president directly. "By damaging his property, you and your board have exceeded your legal limits." Her eyes darted around the room, desperate for support, for some semblance of control. But there was none. All power she had wielded so ruthlessly was now meaningless. Neighbors watching through windows held their breath. Some wondered if this was justice finally arriving. Others feared retaliation. He did not move. He did not celebrate. He remained calm, grounded, silent. For months, they had tried to provoke him. For months, they had assumed calm was weakness. Now, that same calm was the foundation of his power. The HOA president tried one last time. "This isn't over," she shouted, her voice trembling. He met her gaze, unflinching. "It is over," he replied. The city officials nodded to the police officers standing nearby. They began recording every statement, documenting every violation. She realized, finally, that she had underestimated him. All the control, all the rules, all the threats she had used to bend people to her will had failed. He stepped back slightly, looking at his broken mansion. It had been damaged, yes, but the spirit of his home, the truth of ownership, remained unbroken. The lake rippled gently under the morning sun. The wind carried the sound of leaves rustling, as if nature itself had acknowledged the shift. The quiet man, once underestimated, had become untouchable in a way they could not understand. Neighbors began to emerge cautiously. Some nodded in respect. Some whispered apologies to him. Fear had turned into recognition. The HOA president remained silent. The board members avoided her gaze. The power she had wielded with such confidence was gone. Stripped away not by anger, not by violence, but by truth. He turned back toward his mansion. Walking slowly, deliberately. Calm as ever, but now stronger than anyone in the community had imagined. The day had changed everything. The HOA's reign of control had been exposed. Their power had crumbled. And the quiet man who had once merely watched, who had once only survived the chaos, was now in control of the story. The lake reflected the morning sun softly. But it mirrored more than light. It mirrored justice, patience, and the inevitable truth. For the first time in months, the mansion felt safe again. Not fully restored. Not yet whole. But the danger that had loomed over him was being removed piece by piece. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He only breathed in the calm, knowing that silence, when used wisely, is not weakness. It is strategy. It is power. And tomorrow, the HOA would learn that the consequences of underestimating him were far greater than they had ever imagined. The city office felt cold. Bright lights reflected off polished tables. The air smelled faintly of paper, leather, and quiet tension. No windows. No escape. The HOA president sat rigidly on one side, her hands gripping a stack of papers like a lifeline. Board members flanked her, equally tense, their eyes darting nervously across the room. Across the table, he sat quietly. Calm. Patient. Observant. Not a hint of fear, not a flicker of anger. For months, she had tried to dominate him. For months, she had assumed that silence meant weakness. For months, she believed her rules, her power, and her machines could break him. Now, she was about to see the truth. A man in a dark suit stood slowly. He placed several thick folders on the table with a measured thud. Maps. Legal papers. Deeds. Signatures. Every document painstakingly preserved. These, he said, his voice steady, explain the history of this entire community. The HOA president scoffed. This is unnecessary. Our authority is clear. The man opened the first folder. Maps spread across the table like a river of truth. Land records. Old contracts. Original agreements. He pointed to a single line. Stamped, signed, and undeniable. This entire community, he said, was developed under a private land trust. The HOA never owned the land. They were only allowed to manage the community. A chill settled in the room. The HOA president blinked. Her hands trembled. Board members exchanged whispers, eyes wide. He stood slowly, letting the weight of his presence fill the room. All eyes turned to him. The owner of that trust, he said, is sitting right here. The words hit harder than any machine, any fine, any threat. For a moment, the room was silent. Even the air seemed to pause. The HOA president's face turned pale. That's impossible, she whispered. He spoke calmly. I funded the entire development years ago. I built this community. I stayed quiet because I wanted peace. Shock rippled through the board members. Their whispers turned into gasps. They realized how blindly they had followed her orders. How confidently they had assumed power over something they did not own. The man in the suit laid out the second folder. Old legal notices. Permissions granted to him personally. Maps showing the boundaries of ownership. By destroying parts of his property, the HOA violated its own authority, the man said, his tone sharp, precise. The laws were never in your favor. Your actions are illegal. The HOA president tried to speak. But the words failed her. Her confidence crumbled under the weight of undeniable truth. She looked around the room, searching for allies. Finding none. Board members avoided her gaze. Fear replaced respect. Panic replaced authority. He did not shout. He did not gloat. He simply observed. Years of patience, of silent strategy, of calm endurance, had built a power far stronger than arrogance and machinery. He leaned back slightly in his chair. The room felt smaller. The air thicker. This, he said quietly, was never about money. It was about respect. Her hands shook. You let us do this? She whispered. He met her gaze evenly. I let you show who you are. The man in the suit closed the folders slowly. We will take further legal action, he said. The HOA has exceeded its limits, and you will be held accountable. The room went silent again. Even the sound of breathing seemed loud. The HOA president slumped into her chair, powerless. Her authority, once absolute, evaporated like mist in the morning sun. The board members, once confident, now looked anxious, uncertain. They had assumed rules were weapons. They had assumed fear was control. They had been wrong. He stood up. No words, no flourish. Just calm presence. A quiet strength that needed no announcement. Outside the office, neighbors watched, whispered, and recorded the events. For the first time, the man they had called quiet and unremarkable was the one controlling the room, controlling the story, controlling the outcome. The HOA president tried to speak once more. This isn't over, she shouted, her voice shaking. He raised one hand. It is over, he said simply. The man in the suit motioned to the city officials. Legal notices were issued. Investigations were scheduled. Every violation documented. She realized, finally, that she had underestimated him. All her threats, all her fines, all her machines had been powerless against patience, preparation, and truth. He turned toward the window briefly, looking out at his broken but surviving mansion. Dust still lingered in the air. Splintered wood still scattered across the deck. Yet the spirit of the home remained unbroken. The foundation of his authority was intact. Neighbors watched in awe. Some whispered apologies. Some nodded respectfully. The quiet man, who had been ignored and underestimated, was now untouchable in the eyes of all who witnessed the reveal. The HOA president sat slumped, defeated, powerless. The board members avoided her eyes. The room, once dominated by false authority, now belonged entirely to truth. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply remained calm. The lake outside reflected the early afternoon sun, bright and still. But its surface mirrored more than light. It mirrored patience. It mirrored justice. It mirrored the inevitable power of someone who had waited, watched, and endured. For the first time, the HOA understood something they could not undo. Rules without fairness, power without respect, and fear without truth are fragile. And those who underestimate calm, quiet strength do so at their own peril. He stepped back from the table, his presence unshaken. The city officials prepared to leave. The HOA president looked small, fragile, human. The quiet man who had once been ignored, the one they thought weak, had become unstoppable. The truth had arrived, and nothing could undo it. The lake remained calm that afternoon. But beneath the surface, currents stirred. Currents that would continue to reshape the community. Long after this day, the lake looked calm again. Not the fragile calm of the early morning before a storm, but the calm that comes after a storm has spent its fury. The machines were gone. The yellow tape had been removed. The warning signs, once menacing, now hung limp in the gentle breeze. The mansion stood tall, scars still visible, but stronger than ever, not just in walls and beams, but in spirit. The news traveled quickly through the community. The HOA president had been suspended. The board was under investigation. All actions against him, the harassment, the false accusations, the destruction, were declared illegal. For the first time, the people who had whispered fearfully about rules and authority were left to confront the truth. She had lost. Not because he had fought back with anger. Not because he had retaliated. But because the quiet strength she had underestimated had revealed itself at exactly the right time. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes. Some walked slowly, hesitantly. Some held their phones, recording, documenting, remembering. Some simply stared. And one by one, they approached him. We are sorry," a neighbor said softly. "We were scared of her. We didn't know what to do." He listened quietly. He did not scold. He did not demand apologies. He understood. Fear silences people. It makes them follow blindly. It hides courage until the storm has passed. Inside the mansion, repairs had already begun. Not hurried. Not cheap. But careful. Thoughtful. New walls were reinforced. Broken beams replaced. Glass reinstalled. The deck was rebuilt, wider and stronger. Not as a symbol of revenge, but as a reminder. Peace is worth protecting. The lake, reflecting the soft light of the afternoon sun, seemed to approve. Ripples danced gently along the surface. A quiet applause for the triumph of patience and truth. He walked slowly along the edge of the deck. His coffee cup in hand. He inhaled the smell of fresh wood, clean air, and quiet water. Neighbors waved. Some smiled. Some offered quiet nods of respect. he returned their gestures with calm acknowledgement. No titles. No explanations. No prideful display. The HOA president no longer walked proudly through the streets. Her steps were careful, quiet, tentative. She avoided eye contact. She had lost the power she had wielded with so much arrogance. The board members, too, had learned the hard way that blind loyalty to authority without fairness could crumble at any moment. The community slowly healed. Children played outside without fear of notices or fines. Neighbors talked freely, no longer checking over their shoulders. The tension that had hung in the air for months began to dissipate. New community rules were written. Simple. Fair. Clear. No hidden fees. No secret punishments. No manipulation. The mansion had been restored. But more importantly, peace had returned. He sat once more on the deck, coffee in hand, watching the lake. The sun began its slow descent, painting the water gold and orange. He did not need to speak. No one needed to know who he really was. The quiet man, underestimated for so long, had reclaimed his home, his community, and his peace. Power had come and gone. But truth, patience, and calm endurance remained. The wind whispered across the water. Trees rustled softly. The community, scarred but wiser, exhaled a collective breath it had been holding for too long. A neighbor waved from across the street. He waved back. Simple. Polite. No titles. No need for recognition. The lake reflected the last rays of the sun. Calm, still, unbroken. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something that had been missing. Freedom. The HOA had been defeated. Not by anger or violence, but by strategy, patience, and truth. Those who had sought power over others had lost everything. And those who had stayed calm, who had endured silently, had won everything. The mansion, the lake, the quiet streets. All now belonged to peace. He took a deep breath, letting the calm settle in his chest. For the first time, he knew that power alone could never destroy what patience and truth could protect. The lake stayed still that night. But it reflected more than water. It reflected justice. It reflected resilience. It reflected the quiet man who had waited, watched, and finally revealed the strength no one could take away. And as the moon rose, silver over the calm water, he understood one simple truth. Those who seek power lose it. Those who seek peace protect it. The lake remained calm. The mansion stood tall. The community began to breathe again. And he, the quiet man, finally returned to the life he had built. A life of calm, of control, and of peace that no one could ever touch again.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it.